revolution is lit.
Uhuru comrades, and welcome to today's Omali Taught Me Sunday Study live with the leader of the African nation, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. My name is Elikya Ngoma, the Director of Agitation and Propaganda for the African People's Socialist Party, as well as your MC for this morning. Today's study is serving as a world update with a look at the situation in Haiti, as well as the anti-colonial resistance in Palestine that took the world by storm. For this study, we'll be joined by Elikya Ngoma, the APSP's Haiti expert, as well as the Burning Spear newspaper's Haiti editor. I'll provide the contextual overview with regard to Palestine. We'll hear from Comrade Elikya on Haiti, then turn it over to Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who joins us live from St. Louis from a brief pause in the U.S. bi-coastal tour that's been taking place that kicked off this fall. We'll continue the discussion with our panelists after announcements and take your questions, so please begin to add them into the chat. And before we start, make sure to share this study far and wide. We know that the colonial media has an explanation, a bogus explanation for what's happening in the world, including with what's happening with Palestine. There's no other analysis like the African Internationalist analysis that we will be hearing today. So please make sure that you get this information out, this study out far and wide. Take a moment right now to like this video, tag your friends, subscribe to our YouTube and to Chairman Omali's Twitch channel. We have to get this discussion out into every corner of the earth to accurately explain what's going on and to continue to build the anti-colonial movement throughout the world. So with that, let's go ahead and get into our overview on what's happening right now with Palestine. So on October 7th, yesterday, 2023, the Palestinian resistance movement in the Gaza Strip, led by Hamas and Islamic Jihad, launched a historic counteroffensive against the Israeli settler colonial occupation regime, reportedly firing over 5,000 rockets and fighting by ground, sea, and air using hand gliders with parachutes. The Palestinian freedom fighters courageously broke through the militarized borders of the Gaza Strip, which is referred to as, quote unquote, an open air prison. The Palestinians reclaimed control of every Israeli settlement along the Gaza border, seizing control of a police station, checkpoints, the headquarters of the Southern Israeli Military Command, and attacking over 20 Israeli military bases, capturing at least 35 Israeli occupation soldiers. The Israeli army was taken completely by surprise. The Hamas military commander Mohammed Deif issued a statement declaring, "We have decided to put an end to all of the occupation's crimes. The time is over for them to act without accountability. Today, the people reclaim their revolution, correct their path, and return to the march of return." The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has declared war on Gaza. Reports are saying that so far, Israel has killed over 200 Palestinians with airstrikes and gunfire. The Israeli government said Saturday evening that it was cutting off the electricity supply for Gaza. U.S. President Joseph Biden has extended the U.S. government's ongoing support for Israel, stating that U.S. support for Israel is, quote, rock solid. At least 100 Israeli occupiers have also been killed, and nearly another 1,000 wounded. Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank are flooding the streets to celebrate and cheer in support of the freedom fighters. In the last year, Israel has escalated its brutal assaults on the Gaza Strip. On August 5th of 2022, over the course of 3 days, Israel killed 33 Palestinians. Another attack began on May 9th, 2023, with airstrikes on 3 houses. Over the course of 5 days, Israel killed 30 Palestinians. Over 500 Palestinians were injured in these attacks. The United Nations has said 2023 has been the deadliest year for Palestinians since it started counting deaths in 2006. More than 200 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli fire since the start of this year, according to the Health Ministry. These facts expose the truth behind the colonial bourgeois media's slanderous designation of Hamas as a, quote, terrorist organization, and their ridiculous claim that the Palestinians initiated an unprovoked attack on the Israelis. In reality, there can be no unprovoked attack by Palestinians against Israel. Every act of Palestinian resistance is provoked by 75 years of colonial occupation, land theft, dispossession, torture, brutality, and slaughter. The bourgeois media also states that the Palestinians have infiltrated or invaded Israel. But we are clear: Israel is occupied Palestine, and it is impossible for a Palestinian to invade Palestine. It is their land. What is happening in Palestine today is a war for national liberation that is part and parcel of the global anti-colonial struggle exploding throughout the world. As Chairman Amalia Shatella has clearly stated, the state of Israel is an illegitimate, white nationalist, colonialist settler state, no different from the United States, South Africa, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. The state of Israel was founded in 1948 as a consequence of a vicious, genocidal process in which Europeans, in this case Jews, slaughtered and expelled the indigenous inhabitants of Palestine and stole their land at gunpoint. All of the land currently occupied by the state of Israel is land that belongs to the Palestinian people. The ideology created to justify the state of Israel is called Zionism. Zionism was developed by an Austro-Hungarian Jew named Theodor Herzl in the late 19th century. Herzl authored the book, The Jewish State. As Herzl saw it, the project of establishing a Jewish state in Palestine was the means by which European Jews could seek to advance their interests within the colonial mode of production. He was clear that it would require the elimination of the Palestinian people. The Zionist movement under Herzl worked to win support from the major European imperialist powers for the Zionist colonization of Palestine. Zionism was, from its inception, an entry point into the colonial mode of production for a sector of the European population. As the chairman has pointed out, the Zionist movement in Europe was consolidated less than a decade after the Berlin Conference of 1884 and 85, where the imperialist governments gathered to carve up Africa among themselves. In fact, Palestine was not the only place considered by the Zionists as the location for the Jewish settler state. They also considered Uganda and Kenya. The Israeli state was eventually established on occupied Palestinian land with the support of British and later US imperialism. Israel was founded in May of 1948 after a brutal period of massacres and expulsions of Palestinians carried out by Jewish settler terrorist organizations. This period is referred to by the Palestinians as al-Nakba, the Arabic word for the catastrophe. The Nakba was a barbaric genocide. Gangs of Jewish terrorists invaded hundreds of Palestinian villages and used every hideous form of violence to destroy and expel the Palestinians from their homes. The Zionists expelled 80% of the indigenous Palestinians from their homeland. Over 600 Palestinian villages were destroyed. By May of 1948, when Israel was formally founded, over 800,000 Palestinians had been driven into exile. In 1967, Israel waged a war to steal even more Arab land. Known as the so-called Six-Day War, Israel invaded and occupied the West Bank, Gaza Strip, East Jerusalem, and the Syrian Golan Heights. The African People's Socialist Party has always stood in profound unity with the anti-colonial struggle of the Palestinian people to reclaim control of their land, resources, and self-determination. As Chairman Amalia Shatella has stated, Israel functions as a military outpost for US imperialism in the Middle East. Israel is used by the US to secure access to resources in that region and to provide US imperialism with a strategically significant minion to carry out its aims and objectives in the Arab world and Africa. The US provides more military financing to Israel than all other countries combined. US's annual aid to Israel is nearly $4 billion. Every single day, the Israeli state terrorizes the Palestinian people who live under siege. Palestinians are forced to live in conditions similar to Africans, who are also a colonized people within the US and elsewhere. Checkpoints, poverty, confinement in concentration camps called ghettos and prisons, the constant police surveillance and brutalization, the torture in cold and dehumanizing detention cells, constant murders, demolition of homes as a form of collective punishment. The Palestinian resistance movement Hamas was founded in Gaza in 1987 during the massive popular uprising known as the First Intifada. In 2006, the Palestinians of the Gaza Strip rejected the opportunistic sellout leadership of the Palestinian Authority and Fatah and voted to elect Hamas as the leadership of Gaza. In response, Israel bombed the Gaza Strip, killing thousands of Palestinian men, women, children, and babies, and imposed a genocidal blockade by land, air, and sea, blocking food, medicine, and other essential supplies from reaching the people there. The blockade remains in effect 15 years later. As noted by the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Human Affairs, the Gaza Strip is one of the most densely populated places on Earth. It has a population of approximately 2.1 million people, and since 2007 has been under a land, sea, and air blockade imposed by Israel. There is no access to clean water. Almost half of Gaza's people do not have enough food. Around 60% of children are anemic, and many children suffer from stunted growth due to malnutrition. 70% of youth are now employed. The APSP stands in unity with the righteous struggle for national liberation of the Palestinian and Arab people and the destruction of the Israeli colonial settler state, as well as all neo-colonial, petty bourgeois Arab regimes that do the bidding of the US and Europe to suppress the people and facilitate the theft of their resources. When Africans are engaged in resistance to colonial police terror in Ferguson, Missouri in 2014, the Palestinians were sending messages to the young Africans via social media with encouragement and information on how to defend themselves against tear gas. In August of 2014, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine issued a statement in support of the African resistance in Ferguson, stating that the Black struggle is leading the world, and also noting that since the earliest days of the Black movement in the US, from slaves revolting for freedom to the civil rights movement and beyond, Black people, organizations, and movements have faced severe state repression, targeting, incarceration, and killings at the hands of the state. On July 29, 2022, the FBI violently and militarily raided 7 homes and offices of the Uhuru movement, including the home of our chairman, Omali Yeshitela, and deputy chair, Onizine Yeshitela, in St. Louis, Missouri. Just a matter of weeks later, in August of 2022, the Israeli police raided 6 offices of Palestinian organizations in the West Bank. The security camera footage of the Israeli raids was strikingly similar to the footage of the FBI raids on the Uhuru movement. Africans unite with the Palestinian people in the struggle to overturn their colonial domination. The African Revolution, under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, the vanguard party of the African working class, is leading the struggle to destroy the colonial mode of production, which is responsible for the exploitation and violence imposed on all colonized and oppressed peoples for the benefit of the white colonizer population. Overturning colonialism as a mode of production is the road to the ultimate defeat of the Israeli regime, which is propped up by billions of dollars of US aid, without which it would not survive for one day. Israel, the US, and all colonial settler states must go. The colonial mode of production must go. Victory to Palestine, victory to the African Revolution. Uhuru. So that is an update with regard to what's going on right now with Palestine. And we're going to also take a look at what's happening right now in Haiti, which we know is the center of who led, the first successful workers' revolution in the world. That was the African Revolution in Haiti. And I want to bring up the African People's Socialist Party's Haiti expert, as well as the Burning Spear newspaper's Haiti editor, Comrade Elikya Ngoma, to speak to us about this today. Uhuru, Comrade Elikya.
Uhuru, Director Kile. Uhuru to everybody participating. Uhuru to Chairman Omali Shatella. As Director Kile said, my name is Elikya Ngoma, the Haiti editor for the Burning Spear newspaper and the Haiti expert by assignment for the African People's Socialist Party. And I wanted to appreciate Director Akile for that update that you just gave us on, what's taking place in Palestine as they have to fight and overcome Israel, so-called Israel, and the colonialism that they're experiencing at the hands of the so-called Israeli people. I wanted to bring 2 brief updates to what's going on in Haiti. One of them, kind of looks like what's taking place in Palestine in certain ways. That's a struggle between what's going on between Africans in Haiti and the people of the Dominican Republic. And then the other is just what's going on within Haiti itself. I want to begin with going back to after the assassination of neocolonialist president Jovenel Moise. Haiti has not had any, leadership, like legally or recognized leadership on paper. And acting as prime minister has been Ariel Henry. And, in leaving Haiti just open ended like this, we have seen over the past few years the rise of these militia, these what they call gangs, a lot which were funded and installed by the Jovenel regime, where he had direct connection with a lot of these gang leaders, which were created to to demoralize and threaten and kill Africans who were resisting, who were involved in daily resisting at the time against the government for its waste of the Petro-Caribe funds. But just in general, we've seen how these gangs have been terrorizing the lives of the people in Haiti, particularly in Port-au-Prince and the capital, which there is a reason for that as well. And so since then, this has been the condition that, Africans in Haiti have been faced. I've written about it for the Burning Spear. I've talked about it in previous #Omali Taught Me episodes as well. So it's a country that's just left where people have to do for themselves. And over the last few months, there started to be a what people were calling a movement taking place in Port-au-Prince called Bois. The literal translation of the words, like separately, bois means wood and calé means peeled, but bois calé also is an innuendo. But this is the term that they use to say that they're going to be raw. I'm going to say it that way. There's more meaning behind it, but they're going to be raw in how they fight. And within Port-au-Prince, for about a month, just a little over a month, no more than 6 weeks, the everyday persons were going through the neighborhoods that they knew that the gangs were, and the gang leaders were, and were fighting back. They were killing them. So this struggle seemed to give people a little bit of hope for that period, because everybody was ready to support Boakale, but it was uh, a a movement that had no leadership or no clear direction. So in while it had some victories, it was very short term and limited victories, which was to go through and and kill a lot of the people who had been terrorizing the people. So for that, there was a show of strength and a show of unity amongst the people there, but it was very short lasting. After the Black Hale movement, which had not been really talked about by colonial media, this is what introduces the question that we're seeing today about the United Nations coming back into Haiti again, this time sending police troops from Kenya. And that's a very important connection for us to make, and it also raises a very important question that we talk about in these #Omali taught me studies and as African internationalists, which is not only the colonial question but also understanding neo-colonialism. What the chairman always helps us to understand, it is white power in blackface. It's when the colonizer takes people from the colonized people that they are oppressing or that they are colonizing, and they use them against them. And so we the Africans in Haiti, Africans from Haiti, but also people who know the relationship between the United Nations and anywhere they step foot, have been very vocal in this recent time about not accepting the United Nations to go back into Haiti. Um, because when the United Nations comes into Haiti, or when they've come into Haiti, they've brought cholera. They, uh, also commit other acts of violence, colonial violence. They rape women, men, children. They just come. They're not peacekeepers as their titles are. Okay, they bring war, they bring terror, and so there had already been a lot of people being vocal about not having the United Nations come in to Haiti. And so now, because especially coming after the Boakale, the the colonizers brings a new trick, which is not a new trick at all. They say, okay, we're going to send Africans into Haiti. A lot of the people who, from what I've been seeing in discussion, a lot of people do understand it for what it is. Even when I have not seen people use the term neocolonialism, which is exactly what it is, I've seen people say that these, to translate from Creole, these are black whites, right? So which is still the question that these are black people, these are African people, but not working in the interests of African people, certainly not working in the interests of African people in Haiti. So this is, where we are at one part of our struggle, fighting neocolonialism, uh, fighting you can't even say leadership, but the position, which is not even actually a legitimate position, of Ariel Henry as prime minister, who has just basically continued in the way of Jovenel Moise, who has continued in the way of Michel Martelly, who once said Haiti is open for business. Okay, so this is the conditions that they have our people in. I just wanted to bring clarity to one point before I go into the next, which is where I said that a lot of the these issues are concentrated in Port-au-Prince, which is the capital. It exists for two reasons. One, a lot of the development, or what used to be the development of Haiti, is concentrated in the capital. It is concentrated in Port-au-Prince, and that is something that came as a result of the dictatorship that took place during the Duvalier regime, where Papa Doc needed to have, absolute control over IET. And so Port-au-Prince was where a lot of the development happened. If even though there were hospitals and schools that used to be in other departments in Haiti, the best of the best was found in Port-au-Prince. So, in that's something, what we're seeing today is not something that just began today, and this is why we have to understand, these questions for what they are, because we have to see that, this is one continuous struggle that has been taking place against colonialism and against neocolonialism as well, because Duvalier, as we know, was a neocolonial puppet installed, by the United States. So I just wanted to touch on that. And then before I pass it over to the chairman, the other struggle where I mentioned the Dominican Republic is, there's a struggle over building canals, which would be water sources that help with, agriculture. So in part of where there's a shared, right before the border that exists between uh, Haiti and the Dominican Republic, there's the African people of Haiti who live in what's called Wanamet, has took it upon themselves to be, to exercise what would be self determination and build a canal, because the Dominican Republic has, about six or seven canals that should be shared with Haiti, but they have like strict ownership over about six of them. So, they took it upon themselves to build a canal which would enter Haiti at two different points of the island. And, having that canal and that water source would definitely be of great benefit to agriculture and the growing of foods, and farming by the people, at least in Wanamed. It's not obviously enough to support the whole of Haiti. And so existing at that on that front is, the Dominican Republic threatening to close the border overall, and to claim that canal as theirs. And people people generally know that Haiti and the Dominican Republic does not have a good relationship. You know, the Dominican Republic has engaged in countless attacks against African people in Haiti, you know, including the Parsley Massacre, which the Parsley Massacre took place at this exact river, where, you know, in October 1937, over 20,000 African people from Haiti, including dark skinned Dominicans, you know, people who they assumed to be Haitian, were massacred for, you know, for being African, of course, for not being there. There was a test to see if the person was Dominican, and the reason why it's called the Parsley Massacre is because they had, you know, they would go up to darker people, African people, people who were unambiguously black, and have them to pronounce the word parsley in Spanish, and so which would be perejil, right? So obviously, I just started, I would have been gone. And it's, you know, it's a test of your R, because in English, the R is at your lips, right? You say red. In Spanish, the R is in your tongue. You say rojo. But in French or in Creole, your R is in your throat. You say rouge. So that would be a difficult word for, you know, Africans from Haiti to be able to pronounce. And so that resulted between 5 and 8 days, you know, over 20,000 African people were murdered. And that's something that did not come from its own either. That's just a part of the history of the dynamic between, you know, African people in Haiti and African people in the Dominican Republic who do not think that they're African. You know, but that goes into another kind of story. I just wanted to bring that up to say that this is actually the same place that this struggle over the canal is happening, and that, you know, this struggle is happening. So all in all, you know, African people in Haiti, as always, are involved in struggle for power over our own lives, you know, are struggling to be a self-determining people. And excuse me, excuse me. And, you know, and fighting for, you know, the power over our own lives and to be a self-determining people. And, you know, it's something that we have to, you know, keep at the forefront of our struggle. For Africans from Haiti, we have to always, you know, keep in mind that this is, uh you know, this is a continuation of, you know, what we fought for in 1804, which is the liberation of Africa and African people. A continuation of of the revolution that was waged and won at the time by Jean-Jacques Dessalines, you know, who presented the slogan to us, "Coupe tête boule caille," and that was a very, you know, it's so exact. I mean, even during this period of Boakale, and people were raising that as a slogan, you know, coupe tête boule caille, that's what it is. Cut heads, burn houses. And it leaves no questions. You know, it makes people have to answer the question, whose side are you on? You're on the side of the oppressed or the side of the oppressor? You're on the side of the colonized or the side of the colonizer? You know, we do not unite with you know, people coming in from the United Nations. It doesn't matter if they're from Kenya, if they are from Africa, you know, which is just an insult. You know, if they're neo-colonialists, the same way Ariel Henry is a neo-colonialist, we do not accept them as our own people. We do not accept them as their leadership. So, you know, as far as the question of African internationalism and the revolution that has to be built now, you know, it's important for all of us to understand what's going on in different aspects of, you know, of the struggle for African liberation. So just to, you know, say that very briefly, it will be there are articles in progress for the Burning Spear around both of these questions, actually. So, you know, there can be more detailed uh via the Burning Spear newspaper. But as far as hashtag Omali taught me, you know, again, I just want to echo Director Kile's overview and to appreciate hashtag Omali taught me for having this on the discussion. And we are one Africa, one nation. African people in Haiti, we know that, we know that we're African people, and we know that ultimately we have to fight for freedom and power over our own lives. And as the African People's Socialist Party stands, we are going to be relentless in that. So salute to the theory of African internationalism. Salute to Chairman Omali Shatella. Viva Haiti. Uhuru.
Viva Haiti, Uhuru, Comrade Elikya, Kupe Ted Bule Kai. I want to thank you so much for being here with us today and giving us this important update, especially in the context of all of this explosive anti-colonial resistance we continue to see throughout the world. And what's really important is that it didn't just come to be this way, that the direct relationship of all of these world events it rests in the colonial mode of production. So these occurrences are not happening in isolation. What's happening in Palestine, what's happening in Haiti are directly have a direct relationship to one another. And that's the colonial mode of production. And, what is clear, increasingly clear, is that the world is changing and we are the ones changing it, and that the colonial powers are fighting like hell right now to hold on. But in the final analysis, they're going to lose their grip completely. So this is a very exciting moment in our history. And again, really want to appreciate Comrade Elikya. And we will, if comrades, if you have questions for any of the panelists, any of the presenters you see today, if you have any questions, please go ahead and type them into the chat so we can take them. We get to that portion of the program. But now, it's my honor to bring up the leader of the African nation, the Worldwide African Revolution, to deepen this discussion further and to help us see the situation from the African internationalist position. Chairman Omali Shatella. Uhuru, Chairman, welcome to the program, and we're very excited to hear your analysis today. Uhuru.
Uhuru, thank you very much, Director Akile. And I really want to express my appreciation to you and Comrade Maestro Ngoma, Elikya Ngoma, for the overview that you provided for this discussion. It is an extremely important discussion. I also want to take this time, per usual, to send a shout out to those Africans who I know are participating with more or less success in this study from various places around the world, especially on the continent of Africa, Mother Africa, our beloved Africa, and the various other places the African Revolution has been dispersed throughout the Caribbean and what have you, where, and that would include Haiti. We suffer from a consequence of all the resources being sucked out and transferred to these colonial powers. So that is very difficult in terms of infrastructure and things like that for people to participate in this study via so-called social media platforms. I want to, as I said, send a special shout out to all of you at home in Africa, to my sister-in-law, who is there in Ghana. I point her out because she's a really important part of this work, as all the comrades in Ghana and West Africa and throughout the continent as well, who, though married to an African in the United States, where there is an assumption of citizenship on his part, like so many Africans, the vast majority of Africans on the continent are denied visas to get into the United States. One has to almost be an absolute recognized official stooge to get to the United States and many parts of Europe from Africa. It's as though the only viable way Africans can come into the United States is in chains. And I might say the same thing has been true of Africans from Haiti, as we know. So I want to just send a shout out to all of you, Comrade Afur, and to everyone else. This is an important discussion. What is happening is that the world is shrinking for the colonizers, and they're in a very desperate state right now. I have just got back last night into St. Louis from a tour, That began several weeks ago, taking me first to the East Coast of the United States. That included Florida and New Jersey and New York and Philadelphia and probably someplace else that I did not mention. And I've just returned from the West Coast portion of that tour, from San Francisco, from Oakland, California, from San Diego, Los Angeles, Santa Monica, etc. It's an extremely important tour. That I did this tour because the United States government attacked me, my home, our organization, and the African Revolution inside the United States through the attack on the African People's Socialist Party and the Hutu movement on July 29th of 2022. And I have since that time been indicted as a Russian agent because I've worked for the liberation of African people, because I've been engaged in work now for almost 50 years to have the United States be held accountable for a violation of the United Nations Convention on the prevention for and punishment of the crime of genocide against Black people in this country, because we participated in elections in this country, 2017, 2019, calling for reparations to African people, because I had the audacity, and our organization did, I should say, to come out in absolute and total disagreement with the way that this war being made right now against Russia under the guise of fighting to protect the poor Ukrainian people is being pursued. We've disagreed with that completely. And what we've seen is that we have been attacked. And the basic and fundamental reason of this attack is because we are clearly an anti-colonial organization, have been fighting against colonial domination of African people, have been fighting to retrieve the definition of our struggle in the United States and throughout the world as a struggle against colonialism, as opposed to this innocuous, and many instances not innocuous, but actually groveling characterization of the struggle as being against racism. In other words, being something to make white people, make the oppressor like us, liquidating the actual struggle that people have to have power. That the colonized people are defined as colonized in part because an absolute expropriation of our power over our own lives, because the ability to feed, clothe, and house ourselves has been taken from us. And all of this work to feed and clothe and house has been misdirected and diverted to the living rooms and living spaces throughout the world, the communities of the colonizer, so that you have people sometimes actually occupying the same territorial spaces as you do in occupied Palestine, that's called Israel. You have the people, the Arab Palestinian people, living on the same land mass, same land space, and catching hell, living under increasingly desperate circumstances and poverty, police violence, military assaults on a regular basis, just as you do in St. Louis, Missouri. The same kind of contradictions are existing. And that is the colonial contradiction. And there's no way we can get around that. And to the extent that the oppressors have succeeded in quieting that aspect of the struggle and misdirecting it, and even raising up sectors of our own population and characterizing them as the leaders of the people, and they are beloved and get so much media attention and time, et cetera, precisely because they unite with the basic strategies and assumptions of our condition as that which is provided by the colonizer. I think that's a really important thing. And so our party and movement have been struggling for more than 50 years against that designation. After the murder of Malcolm X, after the murder of murder Patrice Lumumba, the overthrow of Nkrumah and his subsequent murder, after the wounding and capture and murder of Che Guevara in Bolivia, all of these things occurred, and our party came into existence just like the NAACP, just like the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, as it's called, because of the conditions that's imposed on our communities, except the difference is that we understood that there is a material basis for it. It's not just because a group of white people don't like us, because it's meaningful. It's something that's beneficial for them not to like us, because not liking us justifies being able to steal all of our resources. And they've come up even with an ideological basis for it that's united the majority of the colonizers, the white people, making them active, and if not active, certainly then inactive collaborators with the colonial domination of Black people. They call it racism. And as opposed to having a movement such as what Lumumba and Nkrumah and Guevara and oppressed peoples historically around the world have done to take back our power for ourselves, as opposed to allowing the oppressor to keep our power and use it against us. We have pursued the question of power, and that's been a real problem for the colonizers. They need their definition of reality to be the prevailing definition of reality. They need to be able to say that Black people suffer because of some ineptitude on our part, that somehow we don't have the morality, moral fortitude, or we don't have the intellect, the capacity to run our own affairs. They kill us like they do in Haiti, as an example. And I want to say that Haiti itself is a consequence of the attack on Africa, just like my being in St. Louis is a consequence of an attack on Africa. I didn't volunteer to be here, nor did Africans who are characterized as Haitians volunteer to go to that island. We were kidnapped as a part of a process of building a whole world economy that did not exist before. This is the root cause of every contradiction every oppressed person is facing, and all of the exploitation that we see in the world. Even the white settlers in this country and other places where they've stolen land, even the white people in Europe who walk around blindly and stupidly, often uniting with the notion that Black people can be treated anyway in public view, and African people and people in Palestine who are the Arab niggers, who you can do anything to the niggers and it's all right. In fact, the crisis is such that saying nigger now is something that you can't do. You call it the N-word, because that's evidence of how we've been characterized by our oppressors, etc. So the basic thing is that this is an important era, because the colonial contradiction is blowing up all around, and the world is getting smaller and smaller for the colonizer, who represent the minority of the world's population in the first place. But it does not appear to be that case often, because they've fractured our national identity. They've fractured our territory. So we're no longer Africans, we're Haitians, Jamaicans, we're Ghanaians, we're Congolese, we're Sudanese, we are Afro-Americans, and things to that effect. So that the minority population is allowed, is permitted, or rather has achieved the ability to disguise and obscure the fact that they're a minority on the peoples of the world. And here we accept the definition of being a minority, and what that does is it challenges our willingness to struggle for our freedom, because there's this assumption that we are so outnumbered, that they're everywhere, and there are so few of us. In fact, we are characterized as minorities, and the language gets so confusing. In the United States, you can live in some place and once upon a time in Oakland, California, when it was a majority African population, they would talk about Africans as being like some kind of minority majority. They liquidate the fact of who we are versus who they are. And the reason that's important is because it should not matter who is a majority or minority in a population, for justice to prevail, for people to have rights, for people to be able to feed, clothe, and house themselves. But what has happened is that our oppressors came into existence through the attack on Africa There was no white man. There was no Europe before then. And so they attack Africa. And in the process of doing that, they achieve a national consciousness, a national identity. They become white. They become Europe and Europeans and the rest of that. And they are the ones who created the white man. They're the ones who made this great distinction in the world, and oppression and exploitation is based on that. And because it has fed the stomachs and pocketbooks of so many people who are now known as white, become beneficial to be separated from the rest of humanity because they get paid for it, because they benefit for it. And then also it serves a really powerful kind of spiritual significance. I mean, because at least no matter how bad the white people are treated, at least they're not niggers. At least they're not Mexicans. At least they're not dirty Arabs. I mean, this is the kind of thing and this is the kind of consciousness that permeates the world. And now that's being shattered. And it's being shattered not because somebody passed out information and said, don't say nigger. Not because Al Sharpton said we're going to bury the word nigger now and continue to treat black people the same way, but just not call them dirty names. That's not the thing. The thing is that people have always been struggling. There's never been a time where the oppressed have not struggled to win our freedom. Never, never, never. I mean, you take the situation that we're looking at in Haiti, and I love even the concept of Haiti because in part, this revolutionary movement that wasn't complete, but it was profound in this territory, Haiti, achieved. It was a struggle that was made on the land of the indigenous people, who many of whom were murdered, most of whom, all of whom finally murdered, annihilated by the civilized French and other colonial powers. But it was just really significant that the name that they chose for themselves of the independence was the name of that was from the indigenous people. They didn't call themselves New French or New. They said this is Haiti. They named it for the people from whom this land was stolen. And I just think that was really important. And the other thing I want to say about Haiti is that the Africans there fought every colonial power that existed in the world. They fought them. They fought and defeated the French. They had to fight the Spanish. They fought all of these powers and came out victorious. They fought and defeated the greatest military power at the time of Europe. Napoleon sent the best troops there, and they were defeated. And this struggle by African people in Haiti succeeded in changing the course of history, because part of what the land that I'm on right now, that's called Missouri, came into possession of the United States because France could no longer control it because it was owned, quote unquote, if you will, by France. These Europeans who stole this territory, claimed this territory, which included all the people who lived in this territory, who were not white, who were not French, etc. But because of the success of the revolution in Haiti, the first successful workers' revolution in history, the first successful slave uprising in history, because of the success there of France and the defeat of the mighty Napoleonic military force, they couldn't also protect and hang on to what was called the Louisiana Prop Territory, which was now called Missouri. They couldn't hold it, and the reason they couldn't hold it is because of what has been characterized as a ragtag military force of black people on this tiny island in Haiti, broke the back of the mighty French military force. And so now what happens is that Thomas Jefferson, who increasingly is coming to be recognized as a pedophile, a brutal, murderous pedophile that's held up as this great libertarian in the U.S. tradition and what have you. And I call him a pedophile because he started raping this 13-year-old child who he owned as his own property, and who had babies by him. Her name was Sally Hemings. And so Jefferson, because he wants to extend the slave trade inside the United States, sees this great opportunity with the weakened France to purchase the so-called Louisiana Territory, which constitutes, I think, more than a third of the U.S. territory as it now exists. And that meant not just the land, not just trees and water and plants, but people. Indigenous people lived here. And so this is part of how this entire thing is in the process of being constructed. But not just any way they wanted to, because the people fought. The indigenous people were fighting whose land was being stolen from them. African people were fighting who've been stolen from our land and what have you. This is ongoing. It didn't start just now. It didn't start with Kenya sending troops, being willing to send forces into this territory known as Haiti. It didn't start with an FBI raid on the properties and of the Uhuru movement, property and homes of the Uhuru movement, the African People's Social, has been ongoing. It's been a part of the process of rejection of this parasitic assault on Black people in the rest of the world. So this has been what we've characterized all along as a critical contradiction that this system suffers from, is that it's a system built on a fault line of colonialism. And so that every time you construct something on a fault line, they try not to do that, mostly when they're talking about physical structures and what have you. They even talking about at some juncture, California might be going off into the sea because of their fault line, because of this fault line where earthquakes happen all the time. So the whole social system is built on a fault line, so that every time somebody of the colonized struggles to resist, it shakes the entire foundation. It's like it has this earthquake type qualities. And that's what's been happening more and more and more. California, I lived in California for a while, and after every earthquake, they're talking about, we're waiting for the big one. When is the big one going to occur? And that's what they're confronted with right now, the big one. When is the big one going to occur? And so I wanted to say that this situation, and there's nothing they can do to protect this, to protect the system as much as they try, as hard as they try. They can't do it on their own. I'm struck by the fact that that when they came for us, they attacked us, the Uhuru movement, the African People's Socialist Party. It's part of the whole desperation of a colonial system. This nonsense that somehow I'm working for Russia because I'm working for Black people, that we're working for Russia, that we say that they passed the law. When I say they, I'm talking about the colonizer passed the law so that I have supposed to have free speech. They didn't make it for me. They made it for them because I was enslaved when they came up with this. I'm talking about the fact that they created a convention on the prevention and punishment of the crime of genocide. I say they because when this was done, the vast majority of Africans and other people were still living under colonial domination. So they didn't intend for this to be for us. This was to reconcile relationships that existed among Europeans themselves. I didn't come up with that. They came up with that. That's their contradiction. But I'm not going to not fight for freedom because somehow it is inconvenient for them. I'm not going to not say that they should. If you say that I'm supposed to have freedom of speech, that's your law. You created it, not me, not me. The colonizers didn't make the law. That's the colonized who made all the laws. And so you make a law that says it's supposed to have free speech. And now I'm trying to exercise the right to free speech. So you can't justify attacking me because it's your law. You don't say I'm attacking because of free speech. You say I'm attacking you because somebody else told you to do that. Because it's not free speech when you're using it. It's their speech. And what I'm saying is it's my speech. It's our speech. And I'm saying more than that. I'm saying it's been the colonized and the enslaved peoples on the world who have been the leading forces for democracy in the world since the advent of this social system. How did this system come into existence? It came into existence through colonialism, through the attack on Africa, through the dispersal of African people all around the world, through the attack on what we now characterize as the Middle East, all of Asia, etc. This is how Europe got to be powerful. And it's been oppressive from its inception. It's written all these wonderful laws about democracy and free this and free that, but it was for them. And so what happens is when we, that is the colonized, began to move, we are fighting for the freedom, for the democracy that they never permitted for us. The colonized, the enslaved are the ones who have been the leading forces fighting for democracy. They have stolen our democracy. Joe Biden has stolen my free speech. I want my free speech back. It's they who's stolen my freedom of assembly. I want my freedom of assembly back. And so do the Palestinians whose land have been stolen right before them in public view. But they can do it in public view because they characterize themselves as great democracies, and anybody who's shaking up their foundation is an anti-democrat. They talk about what's happening in Africa. You look at places like Mali, Niger. Africans overturned France. The Africans overthrew France in Niger, but France had a black face because they had put somebody in power or give them the semblance of power, and that's supposed to be democracy. So when the people overthrow this puppet, you see thousands of African people celebrating this and what have you. Then they say they have overthrown democracy. That somehow because they overthrow a neo-colonial turd that they put in place, that's an attack on democracy. No, it's an attack on France. It's an attack on colonialism. And what you see what's happening right now, you read about from the bourgeois media, and not just the bourgeois straight up, but even so-called left media talking about what's happening in occupied Palestine that they call Israel. Stolen land. I'm older than Israel was founded in 1948. I'm older than Israel. You know? And so they talk about how Israel, they say things like the majority of the people, and this is one favorite line, do not support, what Hamas is doing. And Hamas was in power because the majority of the Palestinians voted for Hamas. Not only did they vote for Hamas in what they call the Gaza Strip, they voted for Hamas all over the Palestinian territories, and then Palestine was attacked because of that by the illegitimate white nationalist settler state of Israel, by the United States and all these forces, etc. And they got these people living in an open air prison. And that's what the Gaza, what do you mean in the Gaza Strip? The Gaza Strip. And you've got people who are born in Russia, in America. There was a white woman named Golda Meir, who was some kind of school teacher, something in the United States, who became the president of Israel. The Palestinian Arabs don't have any rights at all, but they come and abscond with the rights of the people. And that's the nature of the social system, the thing that people have been fighting against all this time. That's what I'm fighting for. They're not attacking us because of free speech. They're attacking us because we're struggling against colonialism. They're attacking us because they know that we are not just some kind of protest organization. Our objective is for African people to be self-governing people. And we are leading a part of that force. But I just wanted to say that this whole issue of Palestine, this grotesque, murderous war against the Palestinian people, against the Arab people, and especially as it's concentrated in Palestine. And what we've seen is for the longest period of time, the resistance of the Arab people have been concentrated right there in Palestine. And it's been very difficult for them to protect the settler state of Israel as long as Palestine was alive. Because Palestine, in the heart of all of the Arab people in the Middle East, Palestine was just a living example of resistance and terror that was waged against the Arab people. And so part of the strategic objective of the whole colonial entity, when I say entity in this instance, I'm not talking just about those forces who occupy that territory, but I'm talking about France, United States, England, et cetera. The whole thing that they had to do was mute, obscure destroy the notion of there being a viable entity of Palestinian people. And that's been the work that they've done. And this is despite the fact that when they talk about legalism and how the brutal Palestinians, they kill this many, what they characterize as Israelis, and some of them were civilian. There's no such thing as civilian Israeli. And I say this because all of them have to have military training. All of them, you reach a certain age, you go through military training. They are settler regime. They are military force. They are an advanced force of the U.S. Colonial empire, not only for the Middle East, but also for Africa, especially Northern Africa. They have functioned as terrorist entities, and they challenge even the stability of the world because of their willingness not only to continue to expand what they now characterize as Israel. You know, they stole the Golan Heights from Syria. They're attacking Syria. Even as we have this discussion, they are making attacks on Syria, and they are threatening Iran, etc. So the whole world situation is a state of instability, in part because of what this entity does. And so here you have, they've taken the land of these people, and they've denied the people their right to exist. They've scrubbed the name of Palestine from the map, and they now have this entity they call Israel that's occupied by white people. They have used the fact that the struggle that has occurred within Europe and among Europeans, the murder, the brutality that killed a sector of the European population, Jewish population. They have used this to justify committing the most horrendous acts against people who are not white. They have held this up as the worst crime that's ever been committed against human beings. They killed 50 million, at least, so-called indigenous people in the Americas by the 1600s. They killed from 11 to 15 million Africans under Leopold from Belgium. But the worst crime that's ever been committed. You can't even find an indigenous person in the United States. You don't see them walking down the streets or anything. They're in concentration camps of survivors that they call Indian reservations. This goes back hundreds of years, right? But this defining definition of oppression, of brutality, of murder is what white people did to white people. And then we have to pay for it. The Palestinian Arabs have to pay for it. They're taking Palestine because the poor Jews from Europe, etc., need to have a homeland. And then because of what Europeans did to these Europeans in terms of the murder, and it was brutal, it was murder, what they did to them makes it necessary for them to have protection in their own government. But if that's the case, they didn't take Frankfurt, Germany. Germans did that, not Arab Palestinians. Germans killed them, not the Arab Palestinians, but the Palestinian Arabs have to pay the price for it. And if you will disagree with it, that makes somehow you are anti-human. It characterized anti-human now is not what they do to black people, not what they do to Mexicans, not they call it as anti-Semitic. And they've destroyed the concept of Semites so that the Semites are just white people who are Jews, which is, this is how they've reconfigured and redefined the whole world. And this is a trap that people are locked into when we try to make the struggle within the definitions that they have created for us. The oppressors created these definitions. They created these structures and what have you. And so Palestine, this was a remarkable occurrence, what we see happening in Palestine now, because they've have snitches. They've got the Israeli entity has created one of the most serious, intrusive spy system network using the highest levels of technology to spy on people. Much of what they do against us, what they did against us in the African People's Social Party, they were taught that by the Mossad, the Israeli intelligence organization, how to use this technology. And so here they give people cell phones. They give people, they can have your own cell phone, but they got explosives in the cell phone. And so that you've got leaders in the Palestinian movement who are using this cell phone to blow their heads off. This is the kind of thing that we're talking about. This was supposed to be so powerful. This spy network so incredibly potent that what just happened, what is happening now, should be been impossible. I mean, and the other thing that's really incredible is to show the genius of the people, because they didn't come in helicopters when they began fighting. They didn't come in helicopters. They didn't have these jet airplanes and things like that. I mean, they flew under the radar in damn hang gliders. I mean, whoever heard of an offensive that's been made by hang gliders? You understand? I mean, this is just the ingenuity of oppressed people, because people will find a way to be free. You can't put a lock on a cage of people that's going to be secure. The people will find a way out of this cage and what have you. And we're seeing this kind of explosion that's happening in occupied Palestine right now. And I want to salute the Palestinian resistance and the fact that the Palestinians are fighting. Some people have been in the African community here in the United States have been confused around this question, and it's been a purposeful confusion that's been imposed on us. Because, and it's hard to find an African community somewhere where there's not a Palestinian store that's set up. And often the Palestinian store is smelly, and often the Palestinian store will sell pork and other kind of garbage that they don't eat themselves. And often the Palestinian male that runs the store insults African women and do other kinds of stuff like that. And we've had to discipline them. We've had to criticize them. We've had to shut their businesses down and stuff like that. We have to say, if you're going to stay here, you're going to clean up this damn store. And you're also going to have to start making contributions to this community that you live in. You can't come here and then treat us in this community like the Zionists, like the Israelis treat you in Palestine. You can't go to Palestine because of the treatment that you have there. But most people, there are two things at work here. One is the perception at this moment in time of Africans that has been created by the rest of Europe, by even the ones who let them come here. In fact, they come to America often escaping terror and horror that they have to live with. The majority of Palestinians living in concentration camps in various places around the world. They call refugee centers and stuff like that. The Israeli army attacked these refugees camps all the time in the Middle East and what have you. So they come here and looking for a better way of life, and they do have a better way of life. And they've set up, and I've really appreciated this, used to be. It hasn't happened since September 11th, and that's really ironic because it wasn't the Palestinians who initiated September 11th. It was the Saudis. The Saudis that worked against the Palestinians for the Americans, that were headquarters of the bin Laden was a Saudi. And all kinds of Saudi officials were connected with this, and they're hand in glove with Saudi Arabia right now, trying to work against Palestine. But it was they who initiated this process. In 9/11, before then, you couldn't go into a Palestinian store where there wasn't a jar, a can, or something that asked you to put some money in there. What did they do? They sent that money to help the Palestinian people in Palestine. I thought that was always remarkable. Some of these people have never seen Palestine before, but they had a love and loyalty for this Palestine that had been stolen from them because they still have an ideological connection to Palestine. They were still Arabs, unlike what has happened to African people here, where you don't even have your name anymore. The colonizer take you, name you, create you, recreate. This Negro was an invention of the colonizer. But the point that I would make is that we've had to criticize them and say, you can't do that. And we'll criticize them today. But that does not liquidate the fact that they are victims of colonialism, even if they're too stupid at any given time to understand that. Because we don't require them to have an understanding of the contradiction for the contradiction to be real. They may be stupid. If they required understanding, then we couldn't do work in the African community because most Africans don't understand the colonial contradiction. And many of them will find themselves working against their own interests. So we know the science of revolution requires us to understand what the contradictions are so we can move based on that. And if we work and identify what the real contradictions are, you'll see what happens as hang gliders. The thing is that we have to be clear, and what our objectives are as revolutionaries, whether we're going to be moving because we like somebody, dislike somebody, or even because we know them or not know them. When the uprisings began in a very serious way in Nicaragua, we had never met a Nicaraguan before. We didn't have to. But to know that all of our resources should go to support the struggle of the Nicaraguan people to be free of colonial domination, because the colonial constructs hold us down. All of it is held together by colonialism. If the Nicaraguans are successful, then it weakens the grip of colonialism on all of us. And so we throw our lot in with the people of Nicaragua. And that's the basis of what we did. And so this Palestinian question is very serious. And we've had a great relationship as a movement with the Palestinian liberation movement. And so I want to say that we make a distinction between the Palestinian revolution and just ordinary Palestinians who are hustling, just like your local black business person who treats you the same way or worse, than you say the Palestinian shop owner treats you. The Palestinian revolution, our relationship to the Palestinian revolution, the Palestinian resistance, has always been solid, has always been good, and not just the relationship between the African People's Socialist Party and the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, for an example, but generally speaking, the two peoples, as it's represented by the leadership of the revolution, have had solid relationships, and we want to maintain those and deepen those relationships. And I want a hang glider. Yeah. So I just think it's really important for us to understand that and to recognize how powerful and significant it's almost like the Tet Offensive, what we're watching now, and how this thing broke out all over occupied Palestine. And the thing that many of them do not understand, like when you build a wall to try to keep the people out, you also build a wall to put the revolution in. And so all of these settler communities that you've seen this vicious attacks, they take this land, take that land, take it, push the Palestinians out and what have you, but everybody didn't leave. And the revolution didn't leave, and the resistance didn't leave, and the struggle for democracy didn't leave, and the people want to be able to enjoy the benefits of their land and their territory and their people, etc. Disrupt this nasty process of colonial domination that has been imposed on them. It's hard for me to talk about Haiti in a dispassionate fashion because like most of the colonial struggles, because we take our cues mostly from the white people who love us, the revolutionaries, the scientists, the Marxists, and all of this kind of stuff, who've never recognized the significance of the colonized people, who have seen themselves as defining forces in history. And that's normal in the sense that they achieve their definition and their consciousness through the process of colonialism. There's no such thing, as I mentioned before, as a European, before Portugal started this thing out. It was the Normans, and it was the Celts, and it was all these different warring tribes in this territory that we now call Europe. Was no Europe, was no white man or anything like that. It was just contention among themselves in a very desperate and horrific kind of circumstances they lived in. And what happened, what elevated the forces that are now characterized as Europeans and white people, what broke them out of this political economy, this mode of production that's known as feudalism, where the kings and the landlords and things like that dominated everything and the people had no rights at all. What broke them out of that was colonialism. As when these people began to attack Africa and get free labor, get free land, get free resources, and extended it to what we now know as the Americas, where the indigenous people were stuck in mines, bringing up gold and silver that went not to them, right, but went to Europe, to the Europeans. It created the European economy, the whole world economy get constructed through this process, right? And so this is where the whole world economy gets started. When Karl Marx, who was a remarkable man, wrote his book Das Kapital, that has been one of the most significant tomes that you can find in recent history, that helps to demonstrate from what is characterized as scientific way, a mode approach to investigating and analyzing society when he wrote this. And Marx was in bad shape financially, and also he had something suffer from carbuncles and stuff like that. I had to study what the hell is a carbuncle, but it's not a very pleasant kind of disease. But when he was suffering carbuncles and sometimes going hungry, he and his family and needed money to survive for him and his family. It was a man named Frederick Engels, who was his good buddy, his friend, who collaborated and actually organizing some of the stuff that Marx wrote, because Marx had this tendency of just writing, and he couldn't put nothing together. Engels just put it all together and made it make sense. But when Marx did this, when he was occupying museums and libraries in London and places like that, he was able to do it and fed his family. Him and his family were able to do it because Engels' daddy was a capitalist. And Engels' daddy got so much of the money that he got from slavery, from African enslaved in the Caribbean in particular, picking cotton. So here's Marx writing Capital, that's Capital, talking about how the future belongs to the workers of the world. And when he meant workers of the world, he was talking about white people. It wasn't, when I say this, I'm not saying this that Marx had a negative opinion of black people. I don't know. Marx himself has his nickname among his friends was the Moor. So there's something significant about that, as well. But the fact is that that Marx's consciousness was also informed by his location in the whole social system. And there's so much that should be and could be said about this. And I will hopefully, have an opportunity to extend this discussion and, beyond that. But a point that I would make is that the whole world economy got constructed off of this. And much of this was invisible, although Marx was able to say in describing, and he had to describe, where did this capitalism come from that everybody seems to hate so much? What's the origin of this capitalism? He says that in order to understand this, that for there to be capitalist production, there has to be capitalist accumulation. But in order for there to be capitalist accumulation, there has to be capitalist production. So therefore, you have to presuppose that was an accumulation of capital that was not a consequence of capitalist production, but a starting point. He said this starting point was turning Africa into a warrant for the commercial hunting of black skins. It was the initiation of this whole thing in East India, talking about the Indian people who lived in what is now characterized as India, and turned indigenous people here in the Americas into these mines and stuff like that. This is where the whole thing starts. He says this. He says that this, what he characterized as a primitive accumulation of capital, the beginning accumulation of capital, he said it has the same significance in political economy as original sin in theology. This is the starting point for it. But it was not characterized as something significant unto itself. It was significant as it related to the development of Europe, as it related to moving Europe from feudalism to this thing that they call capitalism. But what moved Europe to capitalism was colonialism. It was a colonial mode of production. And that's the thing that has the whole world trapped. And that's why we always get messed up, because when we're fighting against capitalism, somehow we start from the premise that the contradiction is between the industrial working class and the industrial ruling class, and all of that activity. As Marx said, he said that what he characterized as wage slavery, that is to say, the exploitation of the workers, he said wage slavery in Europe required as a pedestal slavery pure and simple in the New World. That's us. But we don't get defined. We don't define ourselves. We use that definition of primitive accumulation, etc., to explain our own reality, and therefore we can't find our way out of here. But now we can, because of African internationalism, because the African working class has its own revolutionary party that takes us beyond these oversimplified and worn out, inexact kinds of definition of reality. And we now have given ourselves agency. Because when you talk about primitive accumulation, you take away agency from the African people, from the victims of this process that creates capitalism. We have no agency. We have It's not us who are doing this thing that's happening for Europe, for white people, etc. But we have agency, and we have identified that. So I want to say that this is an incredible happening that we see in occupied Palestine. The Palestinian resistance, this major assault on colonialism, and it's profound because the colonial construct is in big time trouble. You see the social fabric of much of Europe is now being torn asunder. And it's very obvious in the United States, which is itself occupied by settlers who rest upon the stolen land of indigenous people, including, when I say indigenous, I mean Mexicans, I mean people throughout the Americas, and the stolen labor of African people. I mean here, I mean in Haiti, I mean various other places that we're talking about. The whole foundation, that's what we're looking at. So this system is being rent asunder. And then you have a situation where everybody who is trying to exist within this colonial mode of production, which is universal, which is global. It's not just something that exists in the United States or in the southern part of the United States. It's not just a naughty white man here, or Trump versus somebody else. The whole social system is a parasitic kind of relationship. And this thing is in big time trouble, and everybody functioning in it. People trying to make their own way, make their own lives. Palestinians want to make their own lives. Africans in Haiti make their own lives. Africans in Mali, Nigeria trying to make their own lives. And also people in Russia trying to make their own lives. People in China trying to make their own lives, but inside this construct. And all of this stuff creates a tremendous amount of tensions and explosive character. And depending on the strength and power and clarity of the anti-colonial movement, it challenges with greater authority the whole colonial construct. It's in a state of disequilibrium, serious disequilibrium, and that's what we're looking at. That's why they attacked us. That's why they are making war on the Palestinian people. That's what they're talking about. And all the bourgeois media are talking about how the Palestinians, how the Palestinians attacked, a surprise attack and killing the poor innocent Israelis and things like that when Palestine came under attack. And they don't even say the Palestinians are doing this. They say that what is the entity that they are defined? Yeah, they said it's Hamas. They're attacking Hamas. They're killing Hamas. It's Hamas. No, those are Palestinians. They voted for Hamas, and Palestine has been, whether they did or not, Palestine has been occupied for all this time. And so people are fighting against the occupation, fighting against the theft of the resource, fighting for the future of their children that has been kidnapped. And they're talking about hostages. They're talking about how Israeli hostages, the Palestinian population function as a hostage. They are hostages to this whole illegitimate white nationalist settler state called Israel. And we're saying it. And we call on the world to recognize and identify it and say, everybody, we have to all out support for Palestine. So we say, long live Palestine. Long live Palestine. Free Palestine. That's our position. And that's the only position that we can have. Just like we said for Vietnam, just like every expression that we saw of colonial domination of the people, because this system is in terrible state of contradiction, and the only thing we got to do with it is because we just refuse to be victims any longer. Palestinians not going to be just victims, and it's really serious because what has happened is the oppressor, the colonizer, has turned history inside out and then characterized itself as the victims. So now the victims are the ones who are the killers. The victims are the ones who are dominating and oppressing, exploiting and stealing resources, stealing the lives of the people. The victims who killed when they made this assault on Iraq. I remember that. I forgot how many years they starved the people in Iraq. They killed, by the time they officially initiated war against Iraq, some 500,000, 500,000 people, mostly children. And ill people had been killed by starvation and destruction of the infrastructure. People couldn't have clean water and things like that in Iraq. And then they're the victims. The colonizer is the victim. The colonizer who starve us in our communities here, they're the victims. The ones who take away our right to free speech, They are the victims. That somehow we, the oppressed, working with some other Russians or something like that, they're victimizing them. They're taking away their, how do they say that what do they say? The term they use that somehow we are weaponizing free speech. And free speech is a weapon against lies and distortion and oppression and etc. You understand? And so they are the victims. And somehow here we are in the most economically depressed sector in St. Louis. And they're attacking with military forces, etc., cordon off the whole community, and they're the victims, right? We are the enemy of this free speech. And ironically, it's a hell of a thing to be put in this situation. But the ones who've been fighting for free speech in this country historically, we are the ones, Black people. Democracy in this country has been defined by the struggle of Black people. It's we who made universal suffrage happen. And we did it, at the expense of our lives. Children killed, homes bombed, people being assassinated, terror being the order of the day. Black people are the ones who are fighting to end that. And when Joe Biden was working even against something like the Civil Rights Bill, he was a part of a working against Civil Rights Bill. We were the one. I was there working and threatened, my life threatened in Gainesville and in Madison, Florida, et cetera, for just organizing people to vote. And yet Biden's government attacks me as the enemy somehow of free speech and the enemy of democracy. And we're supposed to swallow that. We're supposed to swallow what they're saying about Palestine and the Palestinians. And then, of course, our Africa. When I say our Africa, I'm not just talking about what's happening in Mali, I'm talking about what's happening in Haiti too. And this confusion, nonsense, this contradiction between, they've defined us all. You heard Comrade Elikya talking about how the language spoken differently depending on what version of the white man's language you speak, right? Your pronunciation, they can identify you as either Haitian as they characterize it or something else. But, in the Dominican Republic, they speak French. But the people who they're not French. They ain't come from France. The reason they speak French is because France was a colonial power that enslaved African people. And just like I speak English, because the English-speaking people were the colonizers and enslavers. I'm not English. There's people in the Dominican Republic. They're not Spanish. The people in Africa from Haiti, they're not French, etc. But we get confused and what have because they've redefined us. They've even given us names, their names. They've even named the territories they've stolen for themselves. I'm in this territory that's called America. This is not name that would come from an indigenous name, this land they stole. America's best species, I think, was Portuguese. They've renamed the whole world in their own image, and people are breaking out. And they're breaking out in Palestine. And I just want to say the Haitian Revolution was one of the most critical events that happened in human history. Just like slavery was one of the most critical events, African enslavement. Because, they like to say, slavery, people have been doing slavery throughout history, and nobody's ever had what they've done to Africa. Nobody, nowhere in history. Most horrendous offense that's been committed. A whole continent transformed into this place for the creation of human beings who would be enslaved and whose land and resources stolen, ruthlessly stolen in plain view, and justified as something that had to be done in order to bring civilization. So here are people who come in killing, raping, taking, stealing all kinds of land and resources. They're the civilizers. And the victims are uncivilized. And this becomes part of the rationale, by the way, of their doing this, because they said that despite the fact that they enjoy what they call democracy, et cetera, and this newly created thing that they call Europe, they can deny that to us because this democracy, this freedom that they're talking about is something that's reserved for civilized people. So it is their responsibility, their duty to civilize the rest of us. They call it the white man's burden. Rudyard Kipling, one of the You should look him up. Rudyard Kipling, one of the authoritative poets, colonial poets and writers, etc. Comes this concept of white man's burden. We have to go and kill them. We have to put them in slavery because it's our responsibility. We don't want to do it, but we're burdened to take civilization, to take Christianity to these savages. Even the League of Nations, when they first created it, and they talked about things like self-determination, they made it clear that self-determination was only for the civilized people. And so in order for you, when you apply, you're living under colonial domination, you apply for self-determination through the League of Nations, you had to show how and why you were civilized. And who defines civilization? Right? And this is just the real world that we are talking about. All this stuff is unraveling now. But Haiti was so critical because we're talking about the Haitian Revolution. Haiti was significant because so many Africans who were captured from Africa went through Haiti as part of the coming into the Americas and being dispersed to other places. And one of the things that the enslavers understood early on is that you had to break the will of people, especially who were freshly coming from the continent. You had to break their will. And because newly enslaved people resisted. It's hard to put somebody in, keep somebody in slavery if they've ever tasted, if they still have a good memory of being free, if their memory of practices and things like that are as free people. So they disrupt that. Even the U.S. military teaches you if you ever captured, you want to escape right away. You try to escape right away because once they hold you for a period of time, you can become acclimated. You get used to being captive. You get used to this is where you're going to eat at a certain time. This is where you go to the toilet. This is where you can go to sleep, et cetera, et cetera. You get acclimated to that. So in Haiti, they constant resistance, et cetera, because people are always coming through there. And in Haiti, and people were maintaining a relationship, a closer relationship to African culture. So it was always being reinforced in some way or another, et cetera. And so the resistance was profound. And you're talking about a time where the slavery, the world economy revolved around slavery. So you have this incredible resistance in Haiti. And you must understand this, that as much as you've seen the pictures of them, pointing to Haiti as just this ragtag, ignorant mass and what have you, it's not exactly like that. Some of the most important people in France during this time, Africans from Haiti, they were enslaved in Haiti and they ended up in France. People like Dumas, magnificent general Dumas. You read the Three Musketeers. You read some of the other stuff that came. Dumas wrote that, and he wrote that based on the adventures of his daddy, who was an incredible general in the French army. And the Africans in France, many of whom had come to France from Haiti, are the ones who helped shape and define the so-called French Revolution. Because they like to say it was the French Revolution, it was the basis of inspiration of Africans in Haiti. Right, but it was the Africans in Haiti that had a tremendous influence on France, and contributed to the French Revolution. I want to say that the whole world economy revolved around slavery, and you had this incredible movement in Haiti that busted it up, and it was a revolution that did not get completed. You had same thing in terms of Africans that we find today, the whole neo-colonial construct, where you had incredible force in terms of military genius and things like that, that expressed itself throughout this Haitian Revolution. Toussaint Louverture was one of them, brilliant guy. But he had been almost the equivalent of a house Negro. He was a coachman and stuff like that. Very, very brilliant. He very, understood military tactics and led the struggle for and helped to defeat France at one juncture, but got tricked because he was a general, and the French said they wanted to talk, negotiate, and he was willing to work with France and maintain Haiti as a department of France. And they asked him to come and meet, and against the advice of people like Jean-Jacques Dessalines, he went and got on a boat with them to meet on the boat, and they just upped the anchor and took off with him and took him to France, where they put him in a prison and froze him to death. Literally froze. He froze to death in a prison there. But Jean-Jacques Dessalines is the one who completed that revolutionary project to the extent it was possible to complete it at that time, because he himself ends up being assassinated, and all kinds of intrigues and things like that continue to work their way throughout that. But the population in Haiti has never stopped resisting. It's never stopped. That's the history of that whole movement continues to inflame the consciousness of people there. I walk into a supermarket in St. Petersburg, Florida, and I see a young woman who works there. She's from Haiti. I find out she's from, I said, Coupete. She said, Bouleka, and this is, long time after that thing. It inflames the consciousness of Africans who've come from Haiti. And so it's a magnificent thing. And they had to strangle that revolution. They had to kill it. And they continued to fight it. And because it became an example for here are people who are not supposed to be capable of thinking for ourselves, acting on our own, having a government, self-government, because that's a horrible example of republic. How the first black republic post-slavery is there in Haiti. It's a horrible example. And so they continue to paint the picture of an incompetent, inept, like free people. Being free means that you starve to death. You starve to death because all of the white countries in the world quarantine you and make you pay France reparations for taking their property, which is you. And so you got to pay France, and millions and millions of dollars went to reparations, and up for almost 100 years. And all of the colonial powers ganged up and kept Haiti from participating in the world economy based on that. Haiti was that place where when Mexico, the first African Indian president in Mexico met with Africans from Haiti and said, look, we want a fund from Haiti because of what you've demonstrated, a military force that would go into Cuba to free Africans enslaved there. It was this great example of resistance, and they had to crush that, and they still having to try to crush it. And Haiti is defamed. Black people pick up that song thing. Those Africans, the stupid Africans who participated in that, and the so-called Dominican Republic participated in that, killed Africans from Haiti, brutalized Africans from Haiti, just right across the street, on the same island and what have you. You go to Miami, Florida, and I've done this. It may not be as exact, may not be as acute now, but Africans would tell you that, well, the Haitians live over there and the black people live over there. I don't know how the hell they, you have to really work. It seems to me at that, but that's just a statement of just how effective the whole, effective this whole way of viewing the world based on an economy of slavery and what have you, how that thing articulates itself. So there's so much more that I know I needed to say that I did not say, but I just want to say that the existence of the state of Israel is a provocation. And it is an assault on the rights of the people. To talk about somebody in a slave in Israel destroying the freedom of the democracy, because they define Israel as democracy. It's just the most ridiculous kind of statement that you can make. It's akin to saying that the people, and they have said this before too, in Palestine are working for the Russians. It's akin to that kind of nonsense. It's a thing that has to be deconstructed, and the only ones who can do that are those of us who are colonized. So we say free Palestine, but we say more than free Palestine. We recognize that the Palestinians and the Africans are engaged in the same struggle to destroy this imposition of foreign and alien domination that we recognize as colonialism. We say that Haiti must be free, and that the fact that they're able to use Africans from Kenya, from some other place to go in and attack Black people in Haiti is a disgrace. But we're not just saying that's naughty, that's bad, etc. We're calling our brothers and sisters in Kenya. We're calling the brothers and sisters on the continent of Africa, where they try to bring this process into motion, to kill Black people there, to rise up in opposition. We're calling on Africans who, if you go to Haiti, then join the Haitian resistance, join the Haitian revolution, as opposed to working as instruments and tools of our oppression. We say this fully recognizing that we live in a situation now where the crisis is so pronounced that it has become necessary for our oppressors, faced with the colonial contradiction. This is not just faced with some workers' revolution, as they like to characterize it. Colonial contradiction. It was not that made it necessary for them, the United States, to make, for the first time in its history, a Black man, a former general, Lloyd Austin, as the one who's over the whole military apparatus, the Pentagon. They didn't get somebody, labor union organizer, to put him over the Pentagon to trick the workers. They brought an African there. They put an African, the first time in the 240 some odd year history of the U.S. Marine Corps. And the Marine Corps has this song, what is it, from the something of Montezuma, tracing their history all the way back to the attack on the indigenous people here in the Americas. They, for the first time in history, they gave an African man made a four-star general, and then put him in charge of protecting Africa for white power against the Africans there and against Russia and Chinese involvement on the continent of Africa. For the first time in history, they made an African Air Force general head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That is to say, of all the separate military forces, Marines, the U.S. Army, Air Force, etc. This African is over that. So the entire military apparatus of the United States has a public Black face to it. And that's because of the contradiction of colonialism. Yeah. And the fact is that they want to give white power a Black face, as is killing Black people all around the world. And they would do that with other peoples as well. And that's why we have to deepen this struggle, build the anti-colonial revolutionary movement, and from the perspective of our party, recognizing that central to that is a movement that would place the leadership of the struggle for national liberation in the hands of the African working class and its advanced detachment, in this instance, the African People's Socialist Party. Comrade Director Uhuru, I hope it wasn't too disjointed. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Everything is really jointed, what's together, and I really just appreciate that profound analysis, and just say the people who are watching with us right now are with you, Chairman, in unity with this profound analysis. And I even see statements saying, Chairman, just the clarity that you bring to this whole everything that's happening in the world today, and you bring it back to the center focus that, this thing that tethers us all is this question of the colonial mode of production, and all the struggle that we see is a part of the process of working to overturn the colonial mode of production. And certainly the African People's Socialist Party is conscious of that objective. And our work is to increasingly make this, something that all colonized and, and oppressed and exploited peoples are conscious of as well in making the struggle. And we are kind of, getting close to time. So I want to go through these announcements, certainly, because as we talk about building the anti-colonial movement, what's extremely important is this mobilization coming up on November 4th. So I'm going to be talking about that in just a moment with the Black People's March on the White House. But let's take a look at our announcements, which include first and foremost, to join the counteroffensive to stop the FBI attacks on the African People's Socialist Party and the African liberation struggle. Drop the charges against the Uhuru 3 and donate or volunteer to the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa Defense Campaign. Go to handsoffuhuru.org for more information. And just want to briefly say that these attacks, as the chairman, has laid out, have come as a consequence of the tireless work of the chairman, the party, and this movement in struggling for the freedom of Africa and African people, as well as the end to the colonial domination of the peoples of the world. And, we've been attacked for being engaged in a similar process, which is being able to provide an analysis like this, out, to the world. These are the same things that they are using, to attack us. So it's just really important that people, raise up the demand, hands off Uhuru, hands off Africa, to drop the charges against the Uhuru 3, that they cannot be successful in, crushing our movement and attempting to make political prisoners out of our leaders. So again, go to handsoffahuru.org for information, all information regarding this campaign. On Thursday, October 12th, come to the No to FBI War on Black Liberation, Days of Reparations to African People campaign 2023 in Louisville, Kentucky. This event calls on white people to say no to the FBI war on Black liberation, demand that the Biden administration drop the charges against the Uhuru 3. Join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement's international campaign for Days of Reparations to African People to mobilize white people across the U.S. and world to stand in solidarity with the African Revolution. For more info on this and other Days of Reparations campaign events coming up in St. Louis, Missouri, Tacoma, Washington, and St. Petersburg, Florida, visit uhurusolidarity.org/events. And as I mentioned, we are building the anti-colonial free speech movement through the Hands Off Uhuru Fight Back Coalition, as well as the 15th annual Black People's March on the White House, hosted by the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations. We're saying all out to Washington, D.C. on November 4th for the Black People's March on the White House. The theme of this year's mobilization is not one step backwards. Drop the charges against the Uhuru 3. There will be a pre-rally on Friday, November 3rd, the day before the march, and there will be a conference on Sunday, November 5th, the day after the march. Registration, transportation, housing, and more information can be found available at blackpeoplesmarch.com. If you can't make it to Washington, D.C. on November 4th, get to the West Coast Regional Action in Los Angeles, California, or the Europe Regional Action at the U.S. Embassy in London. Get all the details at theburningspear.com/events and download flyers at blackpeoplesmarch.com/outreach. The October issue of the Burning Spear newspaper is here. Purchase a bundle of 25, 50, or 100 or more to sell and mobilize those in your community to come to the Black People's March on the White House. Some special features of this issue is the call to the Black People's March on the White House, published by the Black is Back Coalition, as well as information regarding how to get on the bus, your transportation to the march, your housing while you're there in Washington, D.C., and so much more available in this issue of the Burning Spear newspaper. So for yourself and also for the forces in your community, those you are trying to organize to get to this march, you can use the Burning Spear newspaper, the October issue, to help inform, mobilize, around this. So again, get your distributor bundle. You can go to theburningspear.store where you can order a one-time or recurring bundle. And every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central Africa time, tune in live for the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa, Africa region broadcast. The Africa region of the African People's Socialist Party responds to this attack with a series of programs under the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa campaign. Join Uhuru movement leaders Safari Mugeri, Morlai Conte, and Visto Savisa, who are making the demand for the FBI and U.S. government to back off and allow the African People's Socialist Party to advance the course of African people for self-determination. Watch and follow on Facebook at facebook.com/APSP Africa Region. The One Africa, One Nation Farmers Market in St. Louis, a project of the Black Power Blueprint, is having the last market of the season, the annual Halloween Festival, a longtime tradition of the African People's Education and Defense Fund. This is a free, family-friendly community event to ensure that youth in North St. Louis have an opportunity to enjoy a safe and fun Halloween in their community. Come out Saturday, October 28th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. by the O'Fallon Park Boathouse. There will be food vendors, live DJ sets, a costume contest with prizes, tons of free candy, and more. The market is seeking donations to buy prizes for the costume contest. You can make a tax-deductible donation at apedf.org/donate and make a note it is for the Halloween festival. If you live in St. Louis, you can also help by donating bags of candy. Please call 314-380-8014 or contact them through their website, oneafricamarket.com, for more information. And of course, make sure you like and subscribe to the Burning Spear TV on YouTube to catch every episode of the Omali Taught Me Sunday Study. And lastly, Uhuru Tours and Speakers Bureau is an institution of the African People's Socialist Party that coordinates events and tours for Chairman Omali Yeshitela and other party speakers and leaders. I mentioned the chairman is joining us right now in a brief pause from this bi-coastal U.S. tour that kicked off at the start of the fall. So you can bring the mobilizing presentations of Chairman Omali and other Uhuru Movement speakers for your campus or organization by emailing info@uhurutours.com or calling 727-914-3621. And for all of the other events I was not able to mention here, please go to theburningspear.com/events to check out the calendar to see everything we've got going on in the Uhuru movement. So that will conclude our announcements for today. And while I'm going to suggest that we maybe take one or two questions, Chairman, but we are close to that time where we would be wrapping. And there were just, I thought I saw questions specifically with regard to the situation in Haiti. So Comrade Elikya, if you want to just jump in and chime in with some answers as well. But we'll make this Q&A brief, but not to worry that your questions have been added to our queue so they can be used in future studies. So just making that note, we do see your question. We have logged that and we'll be able to answer those in future studies. But before we go directly into our first question, I want to note where people are viewing from, which includes Boston, Massachusetts, Marion County, Georgia, Chicago, Illinois, St. Louis, Missouri, Jamaica, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Fort Myers, Florida, West Palm Beach, Florida, Gainesville, Florida, Largo, Florida in the house, Sacramento, California, Lexington, Kentucky, Indiana, St. Petersburg, Florida, San Diego, California, Zambia, Grenada, West Indies, London, UK, and Louisville, Kentucky. And I just saw also Brooklyn in the house, Brooklyn, New York. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Chairman, Comrade Elikya, there's this question, and it's been spoken to, I think, in both of your presentations with regard to neocolonialism. But if there's anything more we can say to this is Comrade, I'm sorry if I pronounced his name wrong, Ilyasar Ngamu on Facebook, who asks, why is William Ruto, president of Kenya, being used against those Africans in IET? So, Uhuru.
Let me just I want to move this forward. Ruto, got to make a note here. But I also wanted to let everybody know, and I wanted to salute my wife, Onazane Yeshitela, our deputy chair, whose birthday is on October 9th. And just to say happy birthday, a revolutionary happy birthday. I just wanted to salute you and say that. In terms of, and also I wanted to say November 4th is extremely important. All out, November 4th, go hard. We've had a question at least one time from the white people who love us. It's been very difficult all the time. Historically, this is the 15th annual march, Black People's March on the White House. And the whole white peace movement, anti-imperialist movement has up to now has really ignored it and refused, meaningful kind of cooperation participation, though they demand and expects that Africans and everybody else will come out to anti-war and peace things that they do. And precisely, they refuse to do it because it's under the leadership of the African working class, Black people ourselves, and we don't have agency. And it's they who usually say, when you come out and march and what you march around and what's peace and what's war. So they can see a war that's thousands of miles away, but they can't see it happening in North St. Louis against our people. And they can't see it happening every day in the Philippines and every day where they're putting people in cages at the southern border in this country. There's a war that's always going on, and it's invisible too often. So some of them, someone has said that to call it a Black People's March on the White House is somehow something that will make somebody think that only Black people are supposed to march, and which is just the most ridiculous thing that you can have. It's the same thing we used to hear in the 60s when we say Black Power. Then they come up and say, well, what about the white people? Well, you can be marched with Black people against the White House. I have not heard this from a single Mexican, from a single Filipino, from anybody else in terms of the Black People's March on the White House. Just like they expect, if they send, Venezuelans march on the White House, I'm going to be there. And other people who believe in freedom will be there as well. So I'm saying, all of you, that all out for November 4th. We have to climb across this kind of garbage, because if we actually want to see an end to war, every evidence of war, real war that's happening in the world, is connected to colonized people. It's an attempt to suppress the struggles of the people, whether it's in Palestine, Venezuela, Cuba, all of these places, the heart and the African community. This is why they would attack the African community, and people would like to narrow this struggle down about this free speech. It's not just a matter of free speech. It's African people speaking out against colonial domination. That's the critical question. It's critical for white leftists, white people, everybody, because the whole social system rests upon the foundation of stolen land of the indigenous people and stolen Black labor. And if you're really interested in trying to overturn this thing, you have to unite with this. And what we hear too often is that people are saying that we are for you as long as it doesn't make us uncomfortable. The fact is, it's not going to be that way. So I'm saying all out hard. They got to go hard for November 4th. I wanted to make that statement. And also, I really want to support the upcoming Afro-Ween. When is that happening? What's the date of the Afro-Ween, where we're having people coming out and we're going to enjoy our children and what have you, and have a great, outing at the farmers market here in St. Louis. And in terms of Ruto in Kenya, why would Ruto do this? Partially because the African Revolution has not been completed at all. We've seen neocolonial, the African petty bourgeoisie has come to some semblance of power. That's what independence has meant. Those who were taking it beyond just independence for the petty bourgeoisie, like Lumumba, like Nkrumah, like others, have been murdered, assassinated, and what have you, to prevent that from occurring. And you have these neo-colonial forces, which is simply white power in blackface, that can be used to facilitate the oppression of African people. When they first started talking about the United States going into Haiti, that was initially how this thing was being talked about. But the resistance, obvious resistance to that, and the optics of having these white power forces go into Haiti was not something that was good. So if they can get Black people to do this, and especially if it's a so-called independent Black country where our people are catching hell, I'm talking about in Kenya right now, then that's more favorable. And Ruto is one of those who has been willing to participate in that. But we say the slogan Uhuru comes from Kenya, from the Kenyan Land and Freedom Army that was called Mau Mau. That's where we took it up. And then what they did was kill the Kenyan Land Freedom Army. They killed 300,000 people in Kenya. They killed Dedan Kimathi, whose slogan, Mau Mau, the Mau Mau slogan, prevailed. It killed him. And then they raised up African petty bourgeoisie in Kenya. I'm talking about Jomo Kenyatta and others. And so this is what we have. We have neocolonial, and today in Kenya, the white landowners own the majority of the land. The Kenyan people in Kenya do not have access to our own economy. We grow flowers. When you're driving down the streets in Philadelphia and somebody standing out there selling flowers, come from Kenya. You can't find lima beans. You can't find food that people need to eat, because people are producing for a market, for the imperialists, for the colonizers, instead of our own. And when we look at Ruto, we're looking at something that's been produced for the colonizer as opposed to for us. That's why Ruto is doing that in Haiti, And he's doing it because Lloyd Austin, another black man, needed somebody else black to go in and do this thing to black people because they can't do it, and white power can't do it in its own white face anymore. We have to take the covers off of all of them, pull these masks off of these Negroes who work to facilitate our oppression and exploitation. So I just want to say those things. I hope that was a response. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Chairman. Uhuru. And I just want to bring up Comrade Elikya for making some final remarks. We're going to go ahead and move to the closing of this incredible study today. So Comrade Elikya, please join us for some closing remarks. Thank you.
Uhuru, Chairman, I think you answered that, like 10 times better than I could have. But of course, this is hashtag Omali taught me. I wanted to salute Dr. Akile and the chairman and just everybody who's been participating for today's study. I think it was great that these different discussions were being tied together because this is how we should understand what is going on in the world. The whole world is in a turning point, and the whole world is, really fighting to end colonialism once and for all. So I think this has been a dynamic study. I want to urge people to, be, just as said before, at the March on the White House on November 4th. I want to urge people to subscribe to the Burning Spear on YouTube and to get the Burning Spear newspaper so that you can consistently get this kind of information and these studies from the viewpoint of African internationalism. And lastly, I want to say, long live the theory of African internationalism, long live the African People Socialist Party. Happy birthday to DCona and to Chairman Amalia Shatella, because they do share a birthday. And, Uhuru, long live, and again, Viva Haiti. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Salute Comrade Elikya Ngoma. As mentioned, she is the African People's Socialist Party's Haiti expert, the Burning Spear newspaper's Haiti editor, as well as the maestra. Every time we come on a study and you hear that theme song, that's the brilliant work of Comrade Elikya Ngoma. Thank you so much for joining this study today. Chairman, one final time, any other closing remarks you want to give us before we move to officially wrap this study up today?
Only thing I want to say is that we have agency, and the best expression of the agency of African people is not some question of Russia, but the African People's Socialist Party itself, that has, for the first time in history, provided the African working class its own revolutionary capacity to define the world as it should be defined, based on science, revolutionary theory, scientific theory, which is absolutely necessary for revolution. And we remember that in order for there to be revolution, there are certain things that have to exist. And among them, crisis. And crisis abounds. That's why they're attacking me at 5 o'clock in the morning here. There has to be crisis. There has to be an inability of the ruling class to rule in the same old way. That's why they have to come up with an Obama and a Ruto and all these other people like to intervene in our lives. And in order to be revolution, there has to be an inability, as I said, the ruling class to rule in the same old way. There has to be a revolutionary party that's guided by advanced revolutionary theory. And this is what we have right now today. And so all out for November 4th, brothers and sisters, it's going to be extremely important for the colonized people ourselves to put our handprint on this crucial moment in history where all of the contradictions of the world coming together, converging, creating what has often been characterized as a perfect storm. We can be free. We must be free. We can win. We are winning. Uhuru.
We are winning. Uhuru.
Free Palestine. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Chairman. And with that, we're going to go ahead and conclude this study today. I want to just echo the call all out to the Black People's March on the White House, November 4th. We want you to bring everything you've got to this march. And we want the red, black, and green. We want the Palestinian flags flying. We want the Mexican liberation flags flying. We want the colonized people of the world there participating at this mobilization. This is a historic turning point in history, and November 4th is going to be just the crowning moment,
And we
for
want
this.
the settlers who want to break from this pattern that they've been locked into to find liberation for themselves and as part of the family of humanity. We want the settlers to be able to break out of this thing, and all of the contradictions that the settlers themselves are confronted with, whether it's oppression of women, oppression of homosexual, exploitation of workers, etc. All of those things have their foundation in the colonial domination, the colonial construct, and that colonial construct has to be destroyed if anybody's going to be free. So you ain't doing us a favor when you come out for November 4th. You're joining the rest of us and rescuing yourselves from this plight that we all suffer from. And this assumption that somehow white people can be free at the expense of everybody else, it doesn't work. And so you want out of here, this is the way forward. We're providing that for you today. November 4th is also an escape route for white people who no longer want to be a part of this construct that's suppressing everybody else. Uhuru.
Uhuru, yes. In fact, there is a reparations contingent that's being organized for this as well. So join the reparations contingent and march under the red, black, and green this November 4th. Uhuru. Uhuru. So with that, again, want to thank everybody for participating in this study, to all of the incredible presenters, Comrade Elikya Ngoma, and also Chairman Omali Yeshitela, to the entire Omali Taught Me Show team for putting together, this production, and all of you for tuning in. And lastly, just want to just say, that tomorrow, October 9th, is a historic day because not just one, but two incredible revolutionaries were born. Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Chair Onizine Yeshitela. So Uhuru, and happy revolutionary birthday. And long live both of these comrades and the obvious imprint that they've made on for the future of Africa and African people and in the whole world, So just really want to salute these incredible comrades. Say happy revolutionary birthday. Follow the chairman on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, and Instagram, and subscribe to the Burning Spirit TV on YouTube to catch every episode of the Omali Taught Me Sunday Study.